All right, recording has started, and this is the June 1st, 2023 Crossplane community meeting. I will right now drop a link in the Zoom chats to the agenda document. So if you're not already in there, you now have a direct link to it, and everyone is more than welcome to add suggestions of topics they want to discuss in any of the relevant sections. So feel free to jump into the doc and add things as you wish. So there have not been any specific patch releases for Crossplane Runtime or Core Crossplane since the last community meeting. We are planning though, or we've been at least starting to talk about it, for doing a series of patch releases probably early next week, I think. There's been a number of fixes and small things that are kind of accumulating in the release branches, like the 1.12 release branch for sure, maybe 1.11 as well. But kind of do like a regular maintenance patch release to get all of those fixes out and available to the community. So I don't think I have a tracking list for that set up yet, but the intent is, let's say, intending to do a series of patch releases early next week, probably. And if folks have anything that they specifically are meaning to include in that patch release, do let me know. I think most everything has been merged, and kind of the long pole is one of the PR I'm working on for our very confusing deprecation message of the controller config type and clearing that up for the community. So I think that's maybe the last one that we're waiting to get in and done. All right. But yeah, let me know if anybody wants to include anything else in those patches. Let's take a look at high-level roadmap and go over everything that's in progress there. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in 1.13. So let's see what sort of things we want to highlight here. Let's see. So Hassan, is Hassan on the call, by the way? Yes, Hassan, do you want to give us a quick update? Because I haven't been able to keep up with it myself, and I know it's pretty impactful. Do you want to give us a quick update on some of your early thinking on design for cross-resource dependencies references, and then how that translates into deletion ordering and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, first of all, I have some concerns and doubts about like merging these two APIs or these two like use cases into a single API. So I left a comment on that regard, so we can continue the discussion on this design specific PR, and we can discuss whether it makes sense to combine the deletion ordering and cross-resource referencing or patching, whatever. This is one thing that worth mentioning. The other thing is on the like proposal issue for deletion ordering. I left a couple of comments, and we are having a discussion with Bob. He's providing quite valuable feedback. So basically, I attempted a POC, but basically I forgot about the XR use case, especially with the deletion policy foreground, which kind of invalidates or makes it hard to solve the problem with the finalizer based approaches. So currently I am in the phase of like evaluating a webhook based solution. I'm doing some POCs on my local, but it looks like at least currently it looks like the most feasible solution is implementing a webhook based solution, so that we can prevent the deletes calls to the XRs. Yeah, that's basically where I am at right now.
Awesome, Hassan. Thanks for that update on that, because I know this is a fairly large scale area to be investing in, and then we know it has direct impact on attempting to solve at least a couple of high level things, and then potential impact as well that is yet to be determined, and potentially you're saying too it might not be the right way to go around unifying a couple other concepts within the Crossplane model. Hassan, did you need any specific unblocking or any specific feedback in the short term on some of these questions here? Are you kind of just proceeding still with POC and trying to get a more formed opinion in your mind while you're working on that?
Yeah, I cannot say that I am blocked at any point right now. It's mostly like I'm mostly focusing right now on the like implementation part of the deletion ordering problem, and the like which API should realize that is the next iteration of my journey. So currently I cannot say I'm blocked, but in the midterm I will need more feedback, and I have plans to discuss this in person with Nick because he was the one who proposed merging these two APIs together.
Sweet, that sounds great then, Hassan. And yeah, thanks for your progress on this so far and sharing the update as well. We're going to dive into integration testing thoroughly later on in the meeting, so we'll go ahead and skip that stuff. The area of observe only resources, that was included in the 1.12 release. And then we want to continue maturing it and investing in the API and stability and all that sort of stuff to make it to beta as well. Because we kind of have a few high level major features in Crossplane right now that are all fairly new and early in their life cycle, and they're all quite impactful and highly demanded. So we do need to continue investing in them to get them to a level that folks can start taking dependencies on them in production and using them there, right? So the whole like composition functions, observe only resources, environment configs, that sort of stuff. Those are all things that we're very explicitly focusing on investing in 1.13 timeframe, such that they can get closer to being ready for production and stable APIs. I think there's not specific updates besides everything we're doing is captured in these issues specifically, so folks can dive down into there. But that is a massive area of investment for the project as a whole during the 1.13 timeframe. And then Philippe, do you want to give a quick update too about validation improvements or investments that you're making in 1.13 also?
Yeah, we're mostly completing phase 2, so validating patches and field paths inside patches. Phase 3 probably will come later. We still have to discuss on that and decide and take a decision on that. But yeah, there is only one item left, which is an open PR waiting for feedbacks.
Excellent usage, by the way, of task lists here, where as the Crossplane project or the Crossplane GitHub org is in the beta program for using task lists. So this is really nice to see, like, the phases explicitly called out here and separated, and then with their own individual task lists, they get, go through those, completion as well too. So very cool to see that, Philippe, in addition to almost finishing the phase 2 also. All right, that's rad. Okay, so that's the 1.13 high level stuff there. I know that we might want to pop a quick look into some of the more granular stuff as well. I have a feeling that the high level stuff covers the high level roadmap items kind of covers a lot of these individual items that are in progress now. But oh yeah, one thing I did want to check in on, and Hassan, this is for you again, my friend, or Dan also, if he's here today too, but I'm not sure. I can't see the list right now. Could you give us a quick update on progress for the improved revision resource ownership transition stuff, or, which has a big impact on reliability of, upgrades and, transitioning, from one version of a package to another. Is there a new update you could share with the community on that too, Hassan?
Yeah, I can't say that like there is much progress on that. Basically, the last status was there was a draft PR that I have opened, but looks like we are not on the same page with them yet. So I need to push that forward, probably like finding some time to discuss this further with Nick, with Dan. So currently it's kind of like waiting for me to get back to that again. But right now there is a draft PR with a possible solution. We just need an alignment on that.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Let's see. And then wait, so Dan was not on the call though? Is that correct? Wanted to see if he had anything to share about this provider runtime interface efforts.
Dan's not on the call today.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for confirming, John. All right, sweet. So I think that's the high level roadmap areas and then some more specific granular issues that are being worked on as well. We have, let's see, the release date is going to be is around the end of July. So July 25th is what we have there. So we do still have a fairly significant amount of time left. We're only 1/3 of the way through the release milestone period right now. So yeah, do folks have other questions, concerns, or things that are important for them in the 1.13 milestone that we want to bring up today to chat about? All right, then we will keep plug in. You know, there is a ton of stuff in progress and a lot of highly impactful features that we're continuing to invest in. So I foresee 1.13 continuing to be, you know, carrying the momentum from some of the other recent releases, 1.11 and 1.12 to speak of specifically, where there will be a lot of activity and a lot of progress. So I'm happy to see all of that, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So thanks everybody. Let's move on down then into, I know there's a big update on you know, what we're doing for CRD scaling issues. So real quick before that, there was a provider Kubernetes release that was done recently with a couple of different fixes. Let's see, what was the one that was really driving that one? Oh, I think it was being able to derive readiness conditions from Kubernetes objects from inside of provider Kubernetes. So that is the 0.9 release was just last week, and that is available for folks to pick that up. So I know a number of folks were waiting on that fix, and that is available. But yeah, so let's jump then into an update then from John. I'll go ahead and ask you for this, John, on what we're doing for CRD scaling and what's the next steps.
Yeah, sure. So our initial testing and you know, feedback we got from some community members as well as our customers showed that you know, the new kind of like smaller providers are being received well. People are seeing positive impact on their clusters from a performance point of view, and not reaching the kind of like scaling tipping point that they're used to. At this stage, with all going well, we'll stick to our planned release date of the 13th of June. And we're just in the process of creating some tooling to help people to automate the process from converting from the monolithic provider to the new provider family. So it will take care of converting all of the configurations for you. And yeah, that and some documentation and stuff. So busy with the final polishing stages before we release that.
John, have there been any like showstopper bugs or anything that have come from the community testing, or has that all been, you know, feedback's good, things are looking good, nothing major that's come up to fix?
No, nothing major has come up. Mostly some you know, clarification we needed to provide, making instructions simpler, and we've changed some of our approaches to optimize how we go specifically from migrating from the monolithic packages to the new ones. So it was mostly around polishing edges and understanding where there might be some confusion and struggling points. You know, the migration guides had a lot of manual steps in there, and there was a lot of concern about user error coming in doing that. And so we're investing in some tooling to automate that process for folks.
Awesome. That's really good to hear, to be able to streamline that and make it more likely to succeed to adopt these new providers if you already have the live deployments. Amazing. All right, so 13th of June, that looks like that would be before the next community meeting. So then if all goes as planned on the next community meeting, it would be +14, would be June 15th, we will be able to celebrate a little bit. These providers are out and people are starting to feel relief from getting their clusters steamrolled by a massive number of CRDs. Sweet. All right. Okay, sweet. So let's keep on rolling here. And it looks like Predrag, we will have plenty of time still for the end-to-end testing stuff. So just talking about some recent pieces of content and updates and stuff from around the community. One of the ones that I think is particularly high quality is Nick did a full report on like 20-something page report on what is Crossplane for O'Reilly that is available. Nick, do you want to just give a quick like overview of that and some of your thinking or the content there?
Sure, it is a report about Crossplane. It's called What is Crossplane? Sorry, Jared, just I was not prepared for this, so it was off the top of my head. It's not a full O'Reilly book. Full O'Reilly books tend to be sort of really focused on like how to, like a guide, like teaching you how to use the technology. This is not that. It's more background of what the technology is. It walks through roughly what we think a good cloud control plane is, how Crossplane can be set up to be a good cloud control plane, and then walks through some use cases for it. I would recommend folks take a look regardless of their level of experience with Crossplane. I think it's probably a good topic for, probably best for people who are unfamiliar with it overall, but I'm sure that there will be some tidbits in there for people who are advanced Crossplane users around some of the context around how we think about what Crossplane is.
Yeah, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, Nick, but I think that this is such a high quality piece of content that really goes into a lot of details and is written very, very well. Nick worked for a number of months on it with the O'Reilly team and a team of editors and all that sort of stuff. So it's ridiculously high quality and it's really quite compelling. So I really wanted to share that because I think people will get a lot of value out of it. There is a number of other cool blog posts and YouTube videos and stuff that are pretty interesting. So feel free to click through all these links and check out all that cool stuff that everywhere else around the community is publishing. All right, so yeah, we're about 20 minutes in, so we definitely have plenty of time to jump into end-to-end testing stuff. I've asked Predrag and I think Lovro's at having a dinner party at his house, so I think it's going to be mostly driven by Predrag. But to kind of give us an introduction to the thinking and the proposal for the end-to-end integration testing, and then walk us through a little bit of the experience that's proposed there as well. I think that I want the main goal here for me is to share this thinking with the rest of the community here on the meeting and watching the recording later that haven't necessarily been following very closely on the PR or maybe even looked at the PR yet, but giving an overall sense of, hey, this is what the proposal is, so more people can understand it. And then we will have time to discuss some of the nuances of it as well. But I really want to kind of share what this thinking is first and do a little demo and stuff. So with that, Predrag, are you ready to go ahead and take the screen and share for us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
All right, let me stop the share then real quick on my side. Oh, not stop recording. Hold on. Oh, stop share. Okay, there we go, sir. All yours.
Thanks. So let me see, what should I think that's enough. So do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I just, well, as Jared mentioned, so we will also like to give a couple more details. So last week we submitted the proposal, which will improve the end-to-end testing or like bring end-to-end testing back to the project. So as pointed out in the one of the issues, which was kind of source was kind of triggering this proposal, like the Crossplane as a project is lacking a number of end-to-end tests, and we would like to improve that situation in particular so that we can test all the user-facing functionalities, or like most of them, on each pull request, and to kind of increase the confidence in the quality of the software Crossplane as a project is delivering. So in order to, the proposal started with analyze a couple of frameworks. So we believe that contrary to the unit tests, so the end-to-end tests typically require more complex setups, fixtures, and what's not, in order to kind of make the writing tests fun for developers. So we need to kind of approach it with different abstraction levels, so simply to hide all these details and like make them kind of reusable across the many tests. So so what we want to propose. So there are a couple of goals we wanted to achieve with these proposals, and we wanted to select a framework approach, testing approach, which will like enable us to do declarative testing. So I assume you're all very well aware, know to the Kubernetes what declarative means. So instead of like really through imperative logic defining the necessary steps towards with interacting with the system, we would like to describe test as a set of defined or like wish states the system should actually reach, and based on that, then validate if the system is responding as expected. Having that, we would also like to really deliver tests, or like having a framework which will enable us to reach really good readability of the tests itself, as any kind of code similar to production code. Tests are more read than written, and it's essential for all the parties which are involved in the project to have like a good understanding how the system behaves and what tests are all about. So it's not just about, we can of course make the testing readable for non-developers, but I said very, very important is to have them readable for developers as well, because after a couple of months, if you revisit the test, then if you're original author of the test, you should be able to really quickly understand what's going on and why the test was written like in a certain manner. Since we are speaking about black end-to-end tests, so the idea is to try to test the system as a black box, basically from the user point of view, using the tools or like the clients which are available to the users. So in that sense, we can also validate that what we are kind of advocating or exposing through documentation, how a user should interact with the system, it's possible, because if we are kind of using some internal APIs or internal knowledge to test the system and the user is not aware of that, so it's kind of, we are violating that kind of concept of end-to-end testing. So we would like to really interact with the system from the user point of view, so using some tooling, and in particular what I mean here is like standard set of clients for the Kubernetes, like kubectl. And then initially the number of tests is of course small, but over the time, and I hope really very soon, the number of end-to-end tests is going to grow. And then since they're taking more time to run because they're interacting with real systems, then it will be quite important to select approach or framework which will enable us from day one to run those tests in parallel, simply to make the CI jobs shorter and to have like quicker feedback for developers and the people who are doing the reviews. Then those tests should be really run against arbitrary system deployments. So typically developers will do that against the kind of Minikube cluster on the pull request on the GitHub. Maybe we're gonna also start running those tests against like a matrix of different clusters deployed on different cloud providers and what's not. So the test should be agnostic to the system deployment, should run against any instance. And again, so the testing code, similar production code, should be reusable, and the joy of writing those tests should increase within over the time, especially at the beginning. Maybe we need to invest more time to write all and to contribute all into pieces. But the intention here is that as the time passes, so like we would like to invest less time into writing a new test. Basically, all the needed pieces should be already there. We should really combine them like with like Lego blocks. What is not really the goal of the proposal, but definitely should come after the proposal gets accepted, is to define a set of use cases we would like to really to write and test the Crossplane against. Yeah, so there are like two basic sets, or like two main sets of the use cases we kind of recognize. So one are related to the package manager itself, another one is related to the composition engine. So, and this is definitely, it's not the goal of this project to identify all these use cases, but definitely something which needs to come after this. And the second thing is that once the tests are there and the infra framework is in place, we would definitely need to set up CI and the GitHub Actions to start running those tests. But again, this is outside of the scope of the project of this proposal. So some of you probably know, so we have visited the pull request, but in essence, what we are proposing here, after investigating and evaluating a couple of frameworks, we would like to propose to the Crossplane community to adopt a methodology which is called specification by example. In essence, it's based on Cucumber as a framework and the Go bindings for it. So the Cucumber is a very well-known framework for typically for executing and running end-to-end tests, and it's used across the industries. I have participated in a couple of projects which are listed here. Like we were successfully testing service binding operator using Cucumber's approach. There are also like others which are running Elastic is running end-to-end tests using Cucumber. Then the performance test for service binding specification also using Cucumber, and in general, Godot bindings are very popular on GitHub. They have like more than, I would say, close to 2,000 stars, and it's really used by 1.2K. There's this statistic on the GitHub which says that it's used by 1.2K GitHub users or projects, and I'm not sure how they're counting. So what is this all about? I will not really go into details about what the Cucumber is and what is the Gherkin language behind. So in the proposal we have shared the link to the further documentation. But in essence, for us, for the Crossplane project, we can see this kind of Cucumber feature files as a sort of configuration. So yes, you can write configuration using YAML syntax or JSON syntax or something else, but Cucumber feature files allow us really to write very easy readable tests, which very close to the English prose. I'll show you how a feature file looks like. So we have submitted together with the PR two features, which are basically replacing the end-to-end tests which were part of the repo already. So one is for example this one, right? So this is something which we are we would like to test composition, and so there's a feature which is called composition, and in that feature file you have very kind of loose syntax. So you need to specify a couple of tags like a feature, and then you have like free-form text, which basically describes whatever you want to the community. So what is the feature about and how it should actually work. Then you have a number of scenarios inside. So scenario is also like identified by a tag, where we basically specify the scenario name, and the scenario name is actually something which is equal to the test name. So you describe in a free-form text what is the scenario about, and then you have a list of steps, so which are sequentially, and none of the control loops or anything with it like that here. So you basically list the steps which are going to be executed. All these steps and the vocabulary which is present here is defined by us. So it's not imposed by a Cucumber or a Gherkin. So these kind of things are really tailored to exactly what we would like to be seen in those feature files. And we have defined, for the purpose of replacing the existing end-to-end test, we have defined a couple of steps which we identify are really essential for those tests to be defined. So first, we say, so we need to have a step which assures that the Crossplane is running in a given cluster. Then we also want to have a test which will basically assert, and if that's not the case, install a given provider in the cluster. Because in order to run some compositions, you need to have some provider or some series inside of the cluster. And after that, we would like to define some composite research definitions. And this test is about that. You can see that we are basically embedding into the step itself the full content of that resource in YAML format. We could do that differently because, again, so we are controlling how the step look like. We could simply say here, instead of doing that, we could refer through some file name or some naming a file which exists on the file system, and then our step implementation or step binding will read from that file. However, we believe that having that embedded inside of the step directly makes the things way more readable, because you don't need to switch the context between a test and inputs. So everything is present here, and it looks like a piece of documentation, basically. So you can see immediately exactly what is applied on the cluster, and that's the full YAML thing. Then, similar to that, and the only difference is basically what we are saying what kind of resources apply to the cluster. We have similar thing with the composition. So we're going to define a composition to the cluster, and then we're going to finally deploy a claim. Again, we are providing here the full content of the claim. And so we are saying here with when we're making difference, we want to emphasize that what's basically under the test. And so under the test is applying a claim to the cluster. As a result of that, some managed resources are going to be created and some status is going to be changed or updated. And after that is coming then block here. So we are saying, okay, so after claim got deployed, we would like we expect that the claim is going to become synchronized and ready. And same goes with a composite resource going to become synchronized and ready, and eventually managed resources as well. And that's all about it. That's single scenario. That's single test. We can now
check. Can I ask a quick question on that? So is the first, because at the very top there was like a feature level definition. Is any of that interpreted by
no.
the runtime, or is that just
no,
like comment,
that's for documentation that's for documentation purposes.
So the first thing that gets
you
interpreted
can write
is background.
here whatever you want. The only thing which is implemented is background. Background is something like if you have a common setup or fixture which is shared between scenarios, you're going to typically put them here in the background. So it's going to be executed only once. Yeah. So you make then the scenarios shorter and more readable.
Got it.
What's coming here, it could be really arbitrary text where we describe what this feature is all about. It could be arbitrarily long and so on. Any further questions?
Something that I know we've been discussing on the design doc, but I still don't fully understand. If you can scroll up a little bit, I'm looking for one of the particular pieces of Gherkin, not a code comment. There's one of the ones where it says what provider to install. I think it's towards the top.
This one.
Yeah. So given provider X package unbound.o blah 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 is running a cluster. So I like that this is quite readable, but one thing that you and I have been talking about on the design is how writable that is. And my understanding is that what happens in the background is that there is a regular expression, and the regular expression is written so that it can extract the string X package.unbound. It will basically identify the provider from within this English language, and then takes that and makes it an argument to a Go function. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that if I wanted to add another test here, obviously there's copy and paste cargo cult style, but if I want to add another test here and understand, I can't write the provider. It's not just free form English language, right? There's meaning here. I need to know that I have to write a sentence that starts with the word provider and then it has to be a string specifying a provider reference, and then it has to say is running the cluster afterwards, right? How do I know to write that correctly? Like, how do I make sure I get those given strings right? Correct.
So I can tell you there's one easy thing here we can do first. So like this framework, the Godot, gives you also ability to list the step definitions. So I'll just quickly demonstrate this, and that's probably not the final thing we like to get, but we can go towards even better solution. So you basically invoke this test using the standard Go test feature and command, and so then you can also provide there is a number of parameters you can provide to this Godot. And one thing you can see here, I mean, there are plenty of standard flags, but one thing is here you basically you can get, so just here definition. So you can list definitions, and so these definitions I'll show you later on. But you can treat these step names as just more readable function names, which are eventually Go function names, which are eventually called. But if we say now here, okay, the definitions, you will get here those regular expressions you mentioned just a few minutes back. And even like pointing to the pointers to the function which are going to be invoked. Now, the regular expressions are there just because, as you rightly said, there is a way that you can actually parameterize. You can make parameters embeddable inside of the step. But typically, you are not going to go wild there. So you're going to have like a parameter or arguments or two, and when you see here is basically matching the whole sentence here, like the beginning and the end. So what we did with the providers. So here, there is a step which basically has inside in the middle a parameter, which is in our case what we did crafted for the PSC is the image reference. We could do plenty of other things in document, basically in some document, the number of steps and what is the syntax behind it. So we can imagine that we have just here, instead of image reference, we can say that's too complex and that's maybe fragile if we are moving our images from registry to registry and what's not. So we can say we're going to refer a provider by a name, and then we're going to keep somewhere else in the Go code a map or something where we're going to map basically a name to the full image reference and then deploy the provider and so on. It's up to us how we would like to make it understandable or not. So we did that, it was because it's easy, quick, and there was a convention, and we established a kind of convention that basically the last part of the image reference becomes also the provider name, which gets deployed and so on. But we could fully make this completely in different way, in a way how we would like, how we feel and think that it's more readable for developers and for the others.
But some of the ones that don't effectively extract match groups out of a regular expression, so claim becomes ready and synchronized, or synchronized and ready. In the example feature file you showed, the claim that becomes synchronized and ready is in a inline document, and that gets passed to the Go function. Claim becomes ready and synchronized, or whatever the Go function is referenced there, as some kind of argument as well. Is there any way to know?
In this particular implementation, no. I'll show you how this looks like. In this particular implementation is very simple. So we are matching the full like string. So claim becomes synchronous and ready, and then we're calling this function. We could, if we want to kind of now on the Go side, if we want to reuse some functional, make them like more like modular, we could, as you said, maybe parameters and say like, instead of expecting here claim, we could, make it as a parameter, some Go function, and there, check, if the parameter is called claim, then we know what to do this. if the parameter is something else, then we know to do this and so on. We could do that as well. It's really up to us how we would like to structure the Go code. But yes, it's possible.
Got it.
Currently,
Yeah,
it's not. Currently, it's not, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's a really neat property that these feature files are very readable to people who aren't developers. I don't find this to be very writable personally, even with this utility that prints out all of the mappings and the regular expressions and whatnot. It makes me feel that I need to know Gherkin, I need to know the regular expressions, I need to know the mapping and all that kind of thing to be able to make sure I write Gherkin that is valid. I know you and I have discussed this at length on the document, so I don't want to derail this this session, but that was something I wanted to try and clarify to make sure I was understanding correctly how it works.
Yeah. I mean, there are projects, for example, which are. I mean, this list is just the start. We can apply some kind of generation tooling around this, and basically put some documentation, for example. I mean, I'm speaking just what's possible, putting some documentation here, and with Go generate, maybe even generate better, markdown document listing all the steps, and giving you detailed explanation how to use them and so on. So that would be doable. If that's gonna improve developer experience further, that's definitely what would be doable. So regular expression again here should be fairly simple. So we should not go wild there and have many groups and many parameters and so on. And therefore, maybe from my experience, it's better to have like more individual steps which are clearly describing in a free form. So what's this about? Then trying to save some space in code with having like more clever regular expression. Then of course with any regular expression you're not sure so when this is going to be matched and should not be matched and so on. So yeah, in that sense. So I can show you if the group wants to see how this really works in practice. So yeah, I can run some tests for you.
Right. Could you show also the steps where they are configured in the main address for tests? Because this is where I was checking the tests, and for me here is the most clear, and I can just click the function that I wanted. Yeah. So this is the main test file, but basically it's in essence it's a regular go test. So we have just one entry point, and then as a part of configuring this, so we are calling this method, or like the Go dog will call for us. And in initial scenario method, we are registering each step description with the proper function which is going to be executed. And we also have hooks to do some actions before each scenario, after each scenario, before the features and so on. So like that, you can do some cleanups, you can do some other common work like setting up some namespaces or cleaning up some namespaces and so on. Yeah, Nick, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just to make sure I'm making my point. I think that this Gherkin language with Go code with this binding between them it's a layer of abstraction, right? I think the layer of abstraction is, to me, inarguably valuable for people reading this code, right? For if I don't know Go and I want to learn how our tests work, what I like about Gherkin is I can just read that feature file. I don't really need to know the syntax and just read like regular English, which is great. But if I think about writing it, I put people in kind of one of two buckets, right? People who are pretty comfortable with Go and writing Go tests, and then people who are not. And I don't think this helps people who are not, because they need to know regular expressions. They need to be able to open up this Go code. They need to be able to look at this mapping. And for people who are familiar with Go code, well, they could just go write the Go code in the first place without this layer of abstraction. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here is, do we think that this is something that is helping people who don't know Go to write tests or only to read tests?
I believe my personal opinion here is that even for people who know how to write Go test, this particular abstraction allows them to write intent test even quicker. I can just, I mean, maybe Laura can tell more. So what we did for the pull request, in the pull request we have like these two composition features, two features. Like one is about the testing the composition, another one is which replaced the two tests which were testing some aspects of package manager, installing configurations and providers, and checking if you're specifying this skip dependency resolution, what happens. So this is what is currently part of the PR. And yesterday, Laura added a couple of more tests in a different feature file. And yeah, Laura, maybe you should share your experience with that. But in essence, so Laura just added additional or 2 steps. The rest of the things were there. And yeah, please, Laura.
Yeah. So I think our goal is not that non-developers start writing end-to-end tests. Our goal is to help the current developers to write the tests easily. So I don't see that, like, I see that this is like readable and so on for non-Go developers as a bonus, not as a like the reason why we are doing this. So I tried this yesterday because previously Predrag created those tests, and I can say that I needed only to create one test in one patch case and one step in other patch case, and it was very simple because I could reuse what was already there. So my experience is that with this we can easily add new tests, and we can hopefully cover most of Crossplane's feature in like a short amount of time, like compared to either creating our own framework or yeah, basically that, or going into something like end-to-end framework, which could have also like a difficult like setup, which may also not be, maybe I'm wrong, but in this case it seems for me that it's easy for like people to get in and start writing tests. Like it doesn't take long to get into this way of thinking, like in Gherkin.
Laura, what was the step you actually added here?
I just said that the last one, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, this one actually uses some Regis magic because it checks the field is set to something, but yeah, it can be.
Okay, and this is like, let us, if we want, let's go quickly here. So what is the, yeah, okay, that's the step here, right? So
yeah.
Okay, so if we go here, if you want to explain maybe, so what?
Yeah, go to the upper one because the lower one has a hack because of provider dummy, how it works.
And real quick, I wanted to do a quick time check as well, because we have about less than 10 minutes left in the community meeting, and there are a couple more agenda items that got added
okay.
By Bob and Christina. So yeah, let's finish on this topic here, and then wrap it up, and then we can continue discussing on the PR.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just finish fast, and maybe Predrag, you can run a test, and then you can finish.
Okay, you can start explaining. So I'm going to run test here if you want.
Yeah. So basically, this just took the composites that was already saved in the scenario and ran the function that Predrag created earlier for waiting that resource value matches, and that was it. Yeah. So it was not a big deal to add this step. More, I spent time on creating the YAML and so on for the test itself and adding it.
Is it fair to say that the reason that this is pretty quick is from the general pattern of having test fixtures that are supported by reusable functions?
Yeah. I know where you're going with that. If we create already a proper framework for end-to-end testing, we could do similarly in Go. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we kind of have here, right? Like there's we've written a bunch of test code here that is designed to take an input, an arbitrary input, and do something with it. Anyway, we can discuss this in another forum.
Yeah, we'll discuss it for sure. Furthermore, we just wanted to show and maybe invite others if they have some feedback to please add it to the design document. It's as we all know, a bit subjective of how you like to write your tests, but feel free to add your subjective opinion as well. Okay, that's all from me, Frederick, if you want to.
No, so you can see like the test got executed. I just selected a portion of the tests, and you can see here so how things are actually progressing. You see the basically the repetition of the feature file here displayed in the console. At the end, you see like this stats of how many scenarios got passed, how many steps, and so on, and times, and so on. And you could use the regular Go test mechanism to specify even like individual tests by providing the test name and so on. So it's better. You can integrate and invoke the test from any ID in editor, which can invoke Go tests right now. Yeah, feel free to share us further feedback on the PR. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Project and Liver, as well, for walking us through this today and kind of explaining what the thinking was and helping give a little visualization to what the experience is, because that is helpful for folks that haven't been super deep in the PR so far and are now getting to see, oh, okay, this is what the experience is like, and being able to form opinions. So it's definitely useful, and thanks for spending the time on that.
Thanks, and thanks already to everybody who added their feedback.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. Let me start sharing again real quick so we can get to the last things and try to finish this off. So, okay, I think I'm sharing again here. So Bob, if you are still with us, look, I think you added this topic about composition selection and nested composites.
Yeah, we tend to have nested pretty deep, 6-7 layers deep in our composite trees. And we're finding that it would be nice to be able to do composition selection at the lower levels based on an input from the claim. And the way we've been doing that now is adding inputs to all the intermediate composites so that by the time we get down to the lower levels, we can do label selection on the composition. That is less than optimal for hopefully obvious reasons. And I'd like to find a way to somehow pass information down from the claim level that would allow me to do composition selection at the lower levels. I mean, the immediate solution that comes to mind is to just put a generic input parameter on every composite that you can pass label selectors down, and you can do patching that is basically a no-op if there's nothing there, or if there is something there, it can pull the labels in and do composition selection. That doesn't seem to be a real optimal solution either. I guess another possibility might be to use environment config for something similar to that. I just didn't know if this was anything that anybody had put any thought into, or if anybody else had run into the same scenario. If there's something out there that I'm just not aware of that makes this possible, if not trivial.
Definitely a good question, Bob. Do you feel like you have the same? Is this like more general beyond just composition selection at nested levels, or is it like more, is it more general of, hey, there's some value that I want from the user, the person who's deploying this claim, I want them to be able to influence it, but I don't want to have to be like pass it from down through all of the nested layers. Is that the same problem domain here, or
yeah? I mean, I think I think it certainly could be generalized. I mean, there's certainly times when there's a deeply nested composite that has an input that's not exposed all the way up, and it would be nice to be able to affect that input that's 2 or 3 or 10 levels deep, without exposing it all the way up. And I realize that some of this goes against the create a simplified API reasoning for Crossplane to be, and I guess in my world anyway, I'm not dealing with an external set of users who I'm trying to simplify APIs for, right? I'm creating APIs for myself that simplify, creating Lego blocks for myself to build things easily, and it's makes sense for me to want to be able to tweak that thing that's 2 or 3 or 10 levels deep, where in a different scenario, it may not make sense to want to do that.
I do think copying claim labels to the composite probably makes some sense, and then potentially you could just patch those labels down as needed. I'm not sure I like the idea of not specifically for this use case, but I am a little wary of the number of crossplane knobs that we're adding to.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So that's something to be aware of while.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought at one point that we were copying labels down, and that maybe it got turned off, or maybe I'm just thinking of something else. But I mean, the only issue I see with copying labels down is it's almost like the composite needs some way of identifying labels that are important to it or that it knows about versus labels that it doesn't know about. Because obviously if I just randomly patch labels into a match label selector, it's not going to find anything for all the labels that it doesn't know. So, that's why I was kind of encapsulating everything in an object where I could select by composite type and know that the labels under that composite type in my object are valid for this composite.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, maybe
about this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, maybe environment config is the way to go, and just have some pass in some sort of label set into an environment config, let the composition, reference the environment config, pull out whatever label selection it's in, and patch it that way. But
yeah, let me have a think about this out of band.
Sure.
I feel like this might be possible with just patching today, but I might be missing something.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Bob. Definitely an interesting question. And then Christina, if you were able to still be with us here as we're kind of going over time, sorry about that, Christina, but if you wanted to bring up your issue as well.
No worries. So this is actually a Terraform issue, not per se a AWS Upbound provider issue, but I am creating a Lambda with image, like container image. And then the Terraform provider every time hits the API and say, hey, because of the source hash, this is a new container. And every time, every 10 minutes on the reconciliation, it recreates my Lambda or pushes like the new image, which is the existing one. Long story short, I was trying to go through the late initializer and remove that source hash, but we need the source hash if it's a S3 zip file. We don't need it if it's a container image. And there is a bug open with Terraform on this, but I don't know when it's going to get picked up. And long story short, I don't see a way to conditionally do that in the late initializer. So I was wondering, like, should I request another, should I open another issue for it? Like, how do I go about it?
Yeah, I think that this issue right here, Christina, is probably good enough for tracking purposes. And yeah, I think that we can take a follow-up to see if, poke on some folks to see if anybody has an idea about ways that you could influence this behavior at the upjet level, or if, what steps could be done for that. And that's probably the only thing at least I can think of immediately, unless somebody else has another idea.
Yeah, just wanted to jump in on this. Won't the observe with the observer only update, and I think it's partial coming in 1.13. So basically to use the lifecycle on some of the field of the CRD, will this resolve this issue?
The lifecycle would. So this is not an observe only resource. I am creating the resource. I'm not sure how would that resolve it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to say
yeah,
something?
Laura, please go ahead.
So there is also a new proposal for ignore changes which is basically morphed into something more like a granular management policy, where you can control if you want late initialize to happen on your resource or not. So, so if you create a resource with late initialize turned off, you shouldn't get this update on the field. But you won't be able to choose like it's done when it's this field is like this, or it's not done when the field is other, because I didn't actually read what exactly were the fields that you mentioned. But yeah, I think this new feature should allow you to ignore late initialization for
yeah, okay, I'll check it out, but again, it's like I don't know if it's conditional, because if the Lambda is created from a zip file in an S3 bucket, then this field is the source hash, which is necessary. So it's like the exact same API, but the it should be conditional on where if image URI is passed, or if it's a S3 key. So I don't. It's not whether the. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So at what point are you creating the? Like, do you set this while creating the managed resource?
Yes. So we're creating a managed resource, which is a Lambda function, and Lambda has two options to create a Lambda. You can either put your code in an S3 bucket in a zip file, or you can give it a container image. So when you give it a S3 bucket and a key, you need the source hash, because you need to know if that updated, right? So then the source hash is useful. But if it's an image, then you don't need the source hash. And right now it's a bug with Terraform that it's still, even though it shouldn't, it still gets the source hash.
Okay,
so
So when you create a managed resource, when you create it with the image, you should put it. You should turn off the late initialization, and when you create it with the bucket, so you should.
So it needs to be conditional. That's my question. Like, can it be conditional?
Yeah, you can decide when you create the managed resource if you want to have it with late initialization or not. So.
Okay, I'll check. I'll read through the proposals here.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Christina, and then Clement. Thanks for connecting those dots to that ignore changes proposal potentially being a solution. And thanks, Lovo, for your expertise there as well. All right, sweet. So that's everything in the agenda. We're a bit over time here, but thanks for everybody's contributions and participation today. It's good to see everybody, and thanks for all the time spent together here. So thanks. Take care, everybody.